Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. What a great turnout. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is great. Another example of what makes Beacon such a great place to live, right? We all appreciate our amazing history, and we're so grateful for the support that you provide that enables us to fulfill our mission to preserve it, but also to promote it. Let all these new people who are moving in understand why it's such a great place, right? So thanks for being here. Why don't you rise, please, so we can begin our meeting as we always do with a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And particularly in the wake of Memorial Day and our services here in Beacon, I do want to thank all of you who have family members who may have made the ultimate sacrifice in the uniform of our country. And I want to take just a moment to recognize Ann Thomas, who's here. Ann's brother was one of those young men who, was it 43 or 44? Ann, when did he? 44. It was in your Historical Society newsletter. Gave his life in France. And in the back row, stand up, Joan Mescal. Come on, Joan, who has run our Veterans Banner program, took all of the letters that Ann's brother sent home to his parents, and she has self-published them through a private publisher, and they are this unbelievable insight into what his life was like, and news of going back and forth too a little bit, right, about inquiring about things in Beacon and everything else. So she does have copies of that book available if you're interested, and both either Ann or Joan can give you more information about it. But please join me in recognizing these two women for ensuring that his story is never forgotten. Well, believe it or not, 35 years ago, I was also president of the Beacon Historical Society. And if you follow our Facebook page and you saw a post today, I was a lot thinner, a lot younger. Yeah, well, weren't we all? Okay, that's a good attitude, right? But 35 years ago today, we had a ceremony in Fairview Cemetery to rededicate Beacon's Soldiers and Sailors Monument. In other words, it's Civil War monument. It had been toppled by vandals years before. It had been rolled down the front of Fairview Cemetery and landed there on the road in front of the cemetery. It had been put in the cemetery vault for decades. And we worked with a lot of groups to not only erect it, and I have to give a shout out to the late, my wonderful friend Luigi Di Dominicus, who got the equipment up there, who actually hoisted the soldier back up on the pedestal. And we put a fence up around the Civil War veterans' graves that were there. So that was 35 years ago today. And look, we're still doing great things, and we're still helping to preserve Beacon's history. Right? Isn't that good? And I'm back as president, so I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but I'm back. So I do want to note that in addition to our fabulous program tonight by Diane Lapis, we are selling copies of our postcards in the back. We have extras. They aren't all from the area, but they may be things that interest you. They make a great gift. And I want to recognize Gary Barrick, who's one of our trustees and our Building and Grounds chairman, and his delightful enchantress of a sister, Marianne Barrick Dahl. Would you thank them for manning our table tonight? I want to share with you, it's the first time I'm mentioning this in public, and Diane Murphy is here with me, my peer in crime, that our wonderful book, which is our door prize tonight, Beacon's Memory Keeper and Storyteller, 38 Years of Bob Murphy's Newsletters, has now actually raised more than $10,000 for the Beacon Historical Society. So we're really proud of that. And I promised Bob that we would keep the Historical Society going and keep the newsletter going. And I think in his memory, he has a June birthday. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers, because he guides our hand a lot, right? Every time we can't find something, we say, Bob, where is it? And somehow we are able to find it. So he's watching over us still. We have a great exhibit going on now at our headquarters, 61 Leonard Street. Most of you might know it as the former St. Joachim's Rectory. If you'd like to come up and see it, we're open Thursdays, 10 to noon, Saturdays, 1 to 3. It's made in Beacon, 25 products that were made here in our community. It makes a great visit if you want to come up on a Thursday and then go out to lunch somewhere in one of our great restaurants on Main Street. So a really nice exhibit, a lot of effort into it. It's going to last through August. Free admission, free parking. It's a beautiful thing. So come up and see us. If you're not already following us on social media, I want to encourage you to. Now, when I came out tonight, on Facebook, we had like 5,596 followers. And God damn it, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I want to have 5,600. So if you're not already liking or following us, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I better see new followers on there, right? Help us roll over 5,600. We're up from about 3,000, right, or so a year ago. So appreciate everybody's feedback and participation with the page. Another great way in particular to share some of Bob's work, which I have been doing a lot of with his pictures and his entries. I don't know about you, but even as wonderful it was when I read it the first time, if it was written 20 years ago, it's all brand new to me again. And so that's why I'm trying to bring his wonderful content to a whole new audience. And so please be following us on social media. It's also a way for you to stay in touch with the things that we have going on and if plans change, for something. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the Elks, who are graciously hosting us for our meetings this year. They don't charge us anything. They're happy to have us, and it's a big year for them. The Elks Club was founded in July of 1924. Bought this building in the original house, the Rothery Homestead, in 1925. And they are looking for new members. If you've ever had an interest in joining the Elks Club, a wonderful service organization here in Beacon, this is the year to do it. There's going to be a big program in July to provide the oath of initiation to a whole new class of Elks, just as it was done 100 years ago in Beacon. And if you don't appreciate all that the Elks Club has done, I'm going to give you just a few examples. They started the funding for Hammond Field, because they saw a need in Beacon. At that time, there were no athletic fields in Beacon. They also started the campaign with $10,000 at the time during World War II for Memorial Field. So essentially all of our, community assets and those two huge and beautiful parks, we have the Elks to thank for that. But beyond that, they support everybody from the Scouts to senior citizens, so many causes here. It's a wonderful organization full of great people, and if you've ever thought about joining, I want to encourage you to do so this year. It's the 100th anniversary of our local lodge. There'll be a big tented gala in July out on the front lawn, and it's just a fun time to join and a wonderful organization. I will tell you that I am an Elk, and that's why we're able to use the building here. So that's one of many benefits if you are interested in that. But other people can rent this space if you want to, and I will let you know that you are welcome after this meeting or any meeting that we have to go up and enjoy a cocktail if you so choose, or a nice beer at the bar afterward. We're welcome to do that while we're in the building. One last commercial message before we turn the program over to our Director of Special Projects, Diane Lapis. And I just want to tell you about our summer meetings. I know that summer, a lot of you go away or, things get busy and you don't think about the Historical Society, despite that fabulous newsletter that you get in the mail. But I just want to tell you about some of the upcoming programs we have to kind of whet your appetite. We always meet on the fourth Tuesday of the month. That's per our bylaws. And in June, we're going to welcome Joe Daly. Some of you may remember Joe from WBNR. He's going to talk about the early days of radio, and he's really excited to come back, talk a little bit about Bob Outer and the early days of WBNR. So that's our June meeting. In July, Diane Murphy, our Director of Collections and Vice President, and I are working on a program called Show and Tell, Our Collection and Yours. We're going to be bringing maybe 10 or 15 items, interesting items from our collection, and discussing their history. But the real meat of the program is going to be the great things that you're going to bring and share with the audience. Ideally things that have a Beacon connection maybe, but something from your family, from your home, from your employment. Maybe you worked at the Biscuit, maybe you worked at Texaco. A show and tell night, just to really share a little bit of our own local connection, our own local love of Beacon. So start thinking about that. All right, the hates, I know you're going to go back and think, oh, I can bring this, I can bring that. So, and then August will bring our second annual trip aboard the Beacon Newburgh Ferry. Last year I made the fatal error of calling it the Newburgh Beacon Ferry, and I was corrected several times. The Beacon Newburgh Ferry. We're going to once again go across the river, go to Billy Joe's, and I think instead of a program, because the acoustics weren't too great, I'm going to pass around some Beacon trivia for you. It'll just be a fun night, and then we'll take the ferry back. Any of you go last year? Wasn't it a good time? Right? Should everybody go this year again? All right, good. I'm glad. And I do want to thank those of you who were able to join us for our first ever movie night at the end of April. We showed The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing, which was the story of Evelyn Nesbit and Harry K. Thaw, who was remanded to Madiwan and escaped from there. It was a great night. We filled up and had to turn a few people away, but we raised about $3,000 for the Historical Society and the good work we do. So thank you to those of you who were able to join us. Anybody have any comments or questions before we start the program? I've talked you to death, haven't I? All right. With that, Diane needs very little introduction. She's our past president. She got the Beacon Historical Society through COVID, and she also moved us into the beautiful new headquarters that we have at 61 Leonard Street in the middle of all that. She is a remarkable historian who is an expert on a number of topics related to Beacon, and tonight she's going to share a little bit about her love of postcards with us. So a big round of applause for our Director of Special Projects, Diane Lapis.
Thank you, Denise. Good evening, everybody. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand in the back. I'd appreciate that. So as you know, or maybe you don't, I am a big fan of postcards. I've been collecting for over 40 years. That's about 2/3 of my life, which is a long time. And part of the reason that I love it is because I look at a postcard and I feel like I can travel back in time. And the same thing happened when I moved to Beacon 16 years ago, where I'm walking down Main Street and I felt like I was traveling back in time because history is so palpable here. And the postcards that are made of Beacon are, they're still current today. If you look at an old Helen Library postcard, it looks just like the building today. So I find it really fascinating where you can just flip in and out of time through these postcard images. One of the first things that I did as a volunteer for the historical was to take all the postcards that were in shoeboxes and put them into archival sleeves and organize them by topic, thanks to Bob Murphy's help in terms of, I didn't know, in the Main Street section, where it started and where it ended. So we put it into, a walking order from east to west, for example. So tonight's program is going to be focused on the history of postcards through the lens of Beacon's cards and using our collections. We're also going to talk about Harry Van Tyne, who was a noted photographer, as well as Jacob Rubin of Newburgh, both prolific and talented photographers who captured local scenes forever preserved on picture postcards. So this past year, the Newburgh Historical Society asked me to do a presentation at their Cocktails and Collections program on the history of postcards through the lens of Newburgh. Thanks to Newburgh historian Mary McTamaney, I don't know if you're here this evening, I don't see her, I was able to study Newburgh's postcard collection and archives and learn about their local photographer, Jake Rubin. How great it was to discover Rubin's contributions to postcard production and shared attributes and possible connections to Harry Van Tyne. Both photographers had a thriving postcard business at the turn of the 20th century, when significant changes occurred in the U.S. postal system, technology, and tourism. In 1902, the U.S. postal system instituted a rural free delivery, instituted penny postcard stamps, and a new design enabling the sender to write a message on the back of a postcard. A year later, Kodak invented a camera that could take a photograph and print onto pre-printed postcard paper. These two innovations partly helped to create the postcard craze that reached America. Locally, tourism was booming. The Hudson River Day Line transported millions of passengers from New York to Albany and back. Visitors stopping at Newburgh could enjoy various historic destinations there and take a quick ferry ride over to Beacon. The Mount Beacon Incline opened in 1902, bringing throngs of visitors daily. The opening coincided with the development of the penny postcard. What better way to share the excitement of travel with family and friends by sending a postcard, the first form of social media. So a large portion of the Beacon postcards that were created were photographed, published, and distributed by our local photographer named Harry Van Tyne. Harry, and many of you have heard this story so many times because I've been studying Harry for the last 10 years. And about a year and a half ago, we did a major exhibit on Harry and his work in Beacon and in Washington. And I'm going to give you just the postcard story section tonight. So Harry was born in 1885 on Willow Street. His father, Robert Van Tyne, owned the stationery store, which is Zacca Joy today, if you're familiar with that, on Main Street, 177. Weirdly, Zacca Joy sells the similar products that Robert sold, such as stationery, pencils, school supplies, even cameras. The store also carried newspapers, magazines, greeting cards, sporting equipment, sheet music, and Kodak camera equipment. Now, Harry was involved in all aspects of the business, starting as a newspaper distributor and then photographing local scenes for postcards. So he would have the Kodak equipment available from the store, and there was a darkroom in the basement where he would produce the images. Harry also worked as a photojournalist for the Mattawan Journal and the Newburgh Daily News, often scooping stories just as they happened, such as Harry Thaw's Great Escape from the Insane Asylum, or Mary Pickford acting in the Song of the Wildwood Flute on Mount Beacon under the direction of D.W. Griffith. Van Tyne turned these singular photos into saleable postcards, highly sought after today. As a quick aside, 40 years after Harry photographed Mary Pickford on the mountain, he sent her copies of the photographs, and she sent a thank you note for his efforts. Now, where could one buy postcards? Of course, at Van Tyne's store, there's the interior, taking up quite a bit of real estate in the tiny shop. But you can see postcards were 2 for a nickel. With the penny postage, it was a great way to communicate with friends and family. The other place would be on Mount Beacon. They had little kiosks. I think this is a kiosk where you could buy postcards. You could also buy them on the Hudson River Day Line and any other stationery and news dealers on Main Street. Van Tyne's also advertised quite often in the local papers about what postcards were available. I don't know if you can see like Camp Tyranda, Fountain Square, the schools, and several other New Creek and Mount Beacon views. So Van Tyne produced over 225 different postcards to date. That there might be more that are always going to be discovered. And what I've done here is I've printed the backs of the postcards so you can see what to look for if you're going to see if you have a Van Tyne card. They had 4 different production runs, the earliest from approximately 1903 and the last ending in 1941. Van Tyne photographed in a very tight geographic area: Beacon, Cold Spring, Fishkill, Wappingers, and Newburgh. And he produced for a very short period of time, from around 1903 till the time he leaves to work in New York City for the Hearst newspapers. So in 1912, he goes into New York. Then they ask him to open a field office in Washington, D.C. in 1915. And then a few years later, he's one of the founding members of the White House News Photographers Association. So he's working in Washington as a photographer, later a manager for the International News Photo. But he continues a close relationship with his friends that are still in Beacon, and he maintains an absentee ownership of the store. So here you see sorry about that. Van Tyne is here as an elder, in 1955. He was born in 1885. And then this is Gordon Wilson, the manager of the store. What I love about this image is these are all the postcards that he created using from photographs. There's Harry Thaw, Evelyn Nesbitt, his father in Louis Tompkins Ho's firefighting gear. The other thing about Harry's relationship to Beacon is that he is a member of the Elks Lodge, this one right here. And he comes back to events, and he also is a member of the Lewis Tompkins Hose Fire Company. So because he had a short time of producing postcards, I always and he's off in Washington for the rest of his career, I always wondered what additional images and postcards would have been produced if Harry had stayed here. On the other side of the river, Newburgh had their own photographer who made postcards of local scenes. Jacob, or Jake Rubin, was born in Russia in 1883 and emigrated to Newburgh around the age of 4. As a young boy, he delivered the Newburgh Daily News and later built a large distributorship. He operated a stationery and sporting goods store and then added photography and postcards to his lineup. His first store was at 78 and then 90 Broadway, and later on 38 Johnson Street, where he also had his home. Does anybody remember the Rubin store here? I know in Newburgh, everyone's like, oh, I remember shopping there for my supplies. Rubin always had a penchant for photography and was a photojournalist for the Newburgh Daily News. As you can see from the advertisements, he also ran a portrait studio and took photos at important events. Rubin photographed, printed, and distributed postcards in a larger geographic area than Van Tyne, coming from as far north as Albany and down to New York City and everywhere in between. He also produced for a much longer time until his death in 1951. Rubin seemed to have his hometown locked up, producing the majority of Newburgh cards under his name. So here's a small selection of postcards from our collection of Rubin's Newburgh cards, and also showing the different monikers that he used on his postcards. So in our collection we have 13 different local neighborhoods surrounding Beacon, and our Newburgh collection we have about 35 cards. Now while these two cards look exactly the same, you will notice that they're published by by Van Tyne and also published by Rubin. So when I discovered that, I said, oh, they must have known each other. So I mentioned some commonalities. Can you share some of the commonalities that I discussed regarding Van Tyne and Rubin? You can just call it out. Right, 1883, 1885, so they're 2 years difference. They both worked with stationery stores and selling. They were both interested in photography and postcards, sporting goods stores. They both worked for the Newburgh Daily News. So where I did not find evidence that they knew each other in terms of letters or newspaper clippings or anything like that, I discovered that they're the postcards they shared in common. So they must have had some kind of business relationship where they're sharing images together, selling Newburgh cards in Beacon and Beacon cards in Newburgh, because you have travelers going back and forth to the river. So I found that it was an exciting discovery as a postcard collector. You see these all the time. They're kind of, after a while, pedestrian, but then when you see this connection between the two photographers across the river, it was a pretty powerful moment. Yeah. No, they're slightly different in coloration, but it's the exact same photograph, because if you look at it's probably a little blurry, but there's a group of people here, the same group of people. It's the same card. I've examined it. But yeah, it does look slightly different in terms of coloration. It could be the production, but it's the same image. And so there. Okay, so the next part of the program, we're going to talk about the history of postcards through the lens of Beacon in chronological order, using images from our collection. And we're going to talk about printed cards like these, as well as real photo postcards and business reply postcards. So while the postcard craze didn't start in the United States until the 1900s, Europe first began selling cards as early as 1880. Early postcards were printed with small sketches. Germany, dominating the printing industry, used a technique called chromolithography. So this is an example of a German card where they have these little vignettes, and they were called Gruß aus, or greetings from cards. And that's where the Americans would take that image. I'm sure you're familiar with these like greeting cards, the large letter, and they'll all say greetings from Hartford, Connecticut. And we have our own, this is the only one that we have that was made here, greetings from Mount Beacon, based on the German Gruß aus cards. So we're going to talk about the real photo postcards, which are commonly called RPPCs in postcard parlance. So they're basically true photographs chemically produced on photographic paper from a negative with a printed postcard back. 1899 was the first year that real photo postcards, as we know them, were produced. As mentioned earlier, in 1903, Kodak Model 3A folding camera was introduced, making it very easy for anybody, USA, to take pictures and print them onto postcards. So most of the real photo postcards are signed by the photographer. And I don't know if you can see it, but it does say Van Tyne over here. And it's also great to be able to date a postcard by looking at the stamp box. Each stamp is unique by the year that the paper was created by Kodak. So there is an index available in postcard books that we have that you can look at the box and it will tell you, oh, this is from 1903 or 1904. So that would have been the earliest date that it would have been produced. And the paper would have lasted maybe 2 years. So you can always date a postcard by within a 2-year period. Oh. So here are some examples of real photo postcards from our collection. We mentioned earlier Harry Thaw when he was remanded at Mattawan State Hospital, but his wife Evelyn Nesbitt would visit him. Here she's coming from the train station, and it says, I can't really read what it says. Evelyn Thaw at Fishkill Landing. So Harry Thaw would visit the Van Tyne stationery store on the pretense of going to the dentist, even though he was in the insane asylum. And he would stop at this stationery store to buy candy and sheet music and records and stationery. And Harry Van Tyne became friendly with him. So he was able to photograph Harry Thaw as well as Evelyn Nesbitt. Another, this is a bit of a shenanigans where Harry Van Tyne dressed up the Fulton statue in a lady's garb. And it says some of these days, and that's when it was located in Bank Square. And another real photo card is the baby show that was on Mount Beacon, and a parade that I believe was it was not here. Oh, I forgot which city it was up in. It's hard to read it from here. But basically, real photo postcards were made for singular events like parades or contests or a special visitor, whereas a printed postcard would have been like more of a scene where they can make multiple copies or hundreds of thousands of copies. Okay. This is one of our rarest cards. It's called a cyanotype, and notice it has a blue hue to it. We do have cyanotype photographs in our collection, but this is the only postcard that I'm aware of. And a cyanotype uses a solution of iron salt and potassium ferrocyanide, and then you place it in the sun, and then you rinse it with water. So it will fade over time, and it is very fortunate that we have such a clear image, but it is one of our rarest postcards. So let's move on to the private mailing cards. The U.S. government issued its first U.S. Official postcard in 1873. The popularity of postcards increased during the Paris, Chicago, and Columbian expositions. Then, in 1898, the government issued new postal regulations, ending its monopoly on the printing of postals. But the words private mailing cards were required to be printed on the back of all cards not issued by the government. So these examples are of the society's earliest postcards, and we only have 2. So I'm always on the lookout for that third or more private mailing card. The new postal regulations, which is a constant theme in this story, replacing private mailing cards with the word postcard, happened on December 24th, 1901. The reverse side was still used for the address, but a small border was available to send a quick message on the front. And then in 1902, Great Britain introduced the divided back. So here you can see where there's a line down the middle called a divided line, soon followed by France and Germany. But it wasn't until 5 years later that the Universal Postal Union members agreed to this design. It took 5 years for them to say, okay, this is a good design. And it was approved at the 6th Postal Union Congress in Rome in 1907. So the United States, on March 3rd, 1907, allowed for the divided back postcards to be put into circulation. And this date is referred to as the birth of the modern postcard, whereby we use the same format today, 117 years later. So I love this postcard, especially for Denise. It was written to Charlotte Thorne, and Denise lives in the Thorne homestead. Is that correct, Denise? Yep. And Charlotte was, do you know who Charlotte was? I can't really hear you.
It may not be my Thorns. Our Thorns come from Westchester County and bought the farm we live in 1904.
Oh, okay.
So it may just be another Thorn.
But this would be 1907, so it's possible. Possible.
It's possible.
But it was fun to find a thorn. It was fun to find.
Yes, I'm sure she was related.
Okay, so so that was one of the reasons why I picked the card, because I knew there was maybe a connection to Denise's homestead, but also this was an important building in Beacon. It was a school for girls from ages 7 to 18, and it was one of the earliest schools that provided educational opportunities in the domestic and science arts. Mrs. Sargent ran the school for 20 years and served over 10,000 girls. So it was an incredible place. And the message says, "Dear friend, this school is largely attended by girls and young lady learning to be dressmakers, and cooking is also taught. The other building belonging to this school is not shown." But I love when you have a card and you learn a little history about the school, about the card itself. Okay, this is another divided back card where we have notice that it wasn't mailed. It was given to a woman named Helene or Helen right here. And often people were collecting postcards. So they would mail the postcard in an envelope to protect it. And that's why there's still a letter to it, and it's addressed to a person, but it's not sent to anyone. And I have the transcription at the top. Here is where Harry Thaw and 75 other Grand Dukes, counts, financiers, black and white, all nationalities alike, hobnob with each other. I preach there every 5 or 6 weeks during the year, a great place for experts in lunacy, which I love that line. I love that line. And there's a real photo postcard of Harry Thaw that Van Tyne took. Van Tyne also took the photos of the postcards of the insane asylum. And here's another example of a divided postcard. And I chose this one to show you the actual glass plate negative that Harry Van Tyne, this negative was found in the Van Tyne stationery store after he dies. And it's seconds different than the actual postcard image. You can see there's a little bit, change in their direction. Okay, so let me just turn my page. Okay, so by 1915, postcards start to change their look due to the British naval blockade of Germany that occurred between 1914 and 19. The blockade affected the postcard industry, cutting off supplies manufactured by Germany, such as ink. So white border cards reduced the amount of ink needed for production. Okay, and I show this card. It almost looks like a real photo, but it's a printed copy of a photo. And notice, just take a quick look at it, at the details of the people. This is a Van Tyne. And these are let's see, get this one. This is Van Tyne, Van Tyne, Van Tyne. This one's Jacob Rubin. So I call these the cash cows. You use the same image over and over again. You change the insets, you change the colors, you change the tree color, and you just keep producing it. So it's fun to look at the different cards. And of course you have your white border cards here, and then your pre-border cards here, all using the same image. Okay, so after all of the cards that I've just shown you are called pre-linen, and in 1931, a man named Kurt Teich devises a new way of printing postcards using a lightly embossed paper to speed up the drying of ink, allowing the finished product to retain brighter colors. And what happens is they do a lot of photoshopping. So if you look at the mountains, it's very wiped over, and then you've got added clouds here and no people on the streets and cars lined up very neatly. So they had this wonderful way of whitewashing it or making it utopian looking and very bright and garish colors, thereby drawing your eye to these cards when they were on the postcard racks in the stationery stores. So Harry Van Tyne creates a series of them, all in 1941. And I don't know if you can see because of the quality of the film here, but right in the corner, you know what, I don't think I actually checked this. Let me just fix that. Oh my, that'll help. Sorry about that. Okay, so right in the corner is a little code, and it's 1B, and that tells you the year that the cards were made. So that's a helpful tool if you want to try to date a card. So the cards that were created by the Kurt Teich company start in 1930. So the A would be 1930, B would be 40, and C would be 50. So if this is a 1B, it's from 1941. So the B is the 40, and the 1 is the first year. So that's how I know that Van Tyne created this series in 1941. Okay, next up are chrome postcards, which, let me just get, in the postcard world, chrome usually means a full-colored card printed on highly glossy stock. Photochrome postcards first appeared in 1938, but took off in popularity after World War II. And this is the most common style of postcards still seen as today's souvenirs. Now, these were not taken by Van Tyne. They would have been taken by itinerant photographers that would have come to the area. But why am I showing this card? Is that a thing you'd see in Beacon? Does anybody know what that is? Ooh, I stumped you. Okay. Well, the New York Rubber Company created the dome that covered the, let me just look at my notes, of the Andover Earth Station in Andover, Maine. So it was a satellite Earth station built in 1961 to communicate with the Telstar 1. And that's why I have this postcard in our collection, because this is a product that was made here in Beacon. Did anybody work at New York Rubber? Nope. Okay. So there's always something new to learn in the postcard world. And I'm just starting to learn about business reply postcards. We don't have them in a collection per se, but they're within collections. So we recently got a collection from of the lawyer Samuel Phillips, and inside were these business reply cards. And it was from the New York Sun for the election of 1902, saying, hey, do you want to buy the newspaper and find out what happened, what the election results were? So business reply cards, you've probably seen them in magazines where they say, place an order for next year. They're postcards made by companies with a pre-printed form for customers to fill out the information and return it back to the company. Postage was paid for by the company, and the address was pre-printed on one side. So here in 1902, this is the year that a local governor was elected. Does anybody know who that might be? Benjamin Odell of Newburgh. So that was what would have been in the newspaper at the time. And it was during the President Teddy Roosevelt's term. Here's a more modern business reply card from the Whalen Drug Store. Does anybody remember the Whalen Drug Store? Where was that? Down by what? Oh, it was down by the dummy light. Okay. So here they're trying to sell the product Tridione, which was an anti-epileptic drug. They no longer make that. After 70 years, they closed it down. But they're they're asking, if you want to order this product, call the phone number 184. If you remember having 3 digits in your phone number in Beacon. Okay. Oh, 4? Well, this was 3 digits. And I love how the pencil is like angling to the number. Call that number. So I'm excited about looking through our collections and finding more business response cards or seeking them on eBay, which is where we find many of the things. Another aspect of our collection are novelty cards. So recently we found this novelty card of the pennant on eBay, and this would have been a typical card that a publisher would have created. Anybody across the country could have ordered it with, put your high school name on it, put your city's name on it. But it was like in pristine condition, and considering it's over 100 years old, it looks brand new. Other novelty cards that we have in our collection include typical ones, where you can throw in any photograph. I'm enjoying myself at, and you put in the city's name. But this one is so wacky. There's power. I just love this so much. It's, kids photoshopped in, kids half naked, riding bicycles, and the kids from Matawan, New York. I don't get it, but I had to buy it. And I couldn't believe no one bought it on eBay. It's like, I can't believe I won that. Okay, some of you are familiar with souvenir folders. We have a number of them in our collection. And what they are basically envelopes where inside are folded 12 to 20 cards in a series. And what's nice about these kind of souvenir folders are great for collectors or researchers, so that you can see what cards are out available that you might not have in your collection, so that you can each one of these cards would be sold individually as well. And then something that I've added to our collection are the modern postcards. So it's nice to have the old stories, but it's also important to see what is happening today. Artist renditions of things around town, photographs, anything to do with the city of Beacon. If I see it in a store, I buy it for the Historical Society. So Sam DiTullo is a noted artist. He's created maybe 30 cards of Beacon using his kind of phantasmagorical paintings. And I love this one in particular because when he was a teenager, he was the guy climbing up the ladder, changing the lights and the signs. So he captured that in a painting. And here's Greetings From. So it's still a very popular theme even today. And here's some examples of some more postcards that we have in our collection, from the local diner to artists' renditions of Main Street, the Dia, and our beloved clock. So why do postcards matter? So if we look at some of these selections here, this is Bank Square. Why is it important that we have those cards in our collection? It's gone. It's gone. It was taken down through urban renewal. So it's important to have that record. Postcards are good because they're sturdy. They survive. You might not have a photograph of it, but you would have the postcards. And the same goes for, obviously, the Beacon Crest Hotel that we lost to a fire. And then the ferry, if I'm sure you remember taking that. This is an actual Reuben postcard. And does anybody know what's happening in this amazing postcard that I just recently acquired for the collection? So between 1922 and 1955 or so, there was a Jewish communist camp in Dutchess Junction called Camp Nishkadaiget. So I've been researching that camp for many years. I live very close by, a mile away from the camp, and I am Jewish, and I'm very interested in learning about what happened at the camp. So this card shows a gathering of the Jewish community. It looks like there's some kind of discussion or presentation, but it just shows like how active and how busy it was on any day. And usually they would have 1,000 visitors at any time. So here's what's in the collection. We have all of our postcards in binders, in archival sleeves, by topic, in alphabetical order. So why do we do it that way? We make it easy for researchers, genealogists. When Diane Murphy and I do exhibits, we always look in the postcard collection and we integrate postcards into the display cases because they tell the story of Beacon. And here are some sample topics that we have. This is just a few of them. And within our Mount Beacon books, we have them sorted by Base Mountain, the Incline, Cottage Life, the DAR Monument. So that's also sorted easily. And that's the end of the program. But I am going to be giving a talk with at the Newburgh Historical Society about Camp Nishkadaiget. If you would like to attend, it's July 18th at the Crawford House. Denise already mentioned about the exhibits and the upcoming events. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
What's the most popular Beacon postcard, do you think?
I don't know. For me?
Stumped you?
I love the one of Main Street. This is one of my favorites. Let me go back. This is a Harry Van Tyne. This one on Main Street. Now, he is standing on the 3rd floor at Lewis Tompkins House, of which he was a member. And he's looking down, and his store is somewhere like over here. So I just love this scene. I love the angle. And I've been on the 3rd floor, and I look down, I'm like, Harry Van Tyne was standing right here, So I love that. That's one of my favorites.
Any other questions? One in the back.
Yeah. The heyday really stops in the 1920s. Yeah, the golden age kind of dies during World War I when the shortage of postcards are no longer really available. And then Kurt Tyke tries to bring back the interest using these linen postcards, and that held its popularity. The linen postcards these are scenes, but most of the Kurt Tyke cards were used for advertising purposes, and those are highly collectible today. Yeah, that's right. You could hardly find them now in souvenir shops. Yeah.
John has a question.
John?
Those pictures by Van Tyne of Harry's store.
Mm-hmm.
What was his status? Did he Was he a prisoner then, or?
Yeah.
Or was one by the riverfront, or?
I'm not. I can't make out where he is, but it does say Fishkill Landing on the postcard. So, as I mentioned, Harry Thaw. Well, real quick backstory: Harry Thaw murders Stanford White, who's a major architect, and he's deemed insane. Comes to the Mattawan Insane Asylum, and he's there for 5 years, I believe. Yeah. And he murders Stanford White in rage because Stanford White deflowered his wife, Evelyn Nesbit, who was a showgirl and very beautiful and a model. So the connection with Harry Van Tyne is that Harry Thaw would come to the stationery store to purchase items. When he was a prisoner, he had special privileges.
A millionaire.
And I have a personal narrative from Harry Van Tyne remembering this time period. It's a 3-page essay about, I remember when Harry came to the store and he bought he named the things that he bought.
And James Forrestal actually at the time was working as like a summer intern at the newspaper, and he breaks the story of Harry K. Thaw's escape when he goes up to Canada, and so that's kind of another interesting connection, here to our local folks. So maybe one more question. Anybody else? If not, we'll go back to John. John, go ahead.
Mattawan High School, what's the physical location?
Good question.
Spring Street School might be what you remember of. So if you were at Barb's Butchery, I have to do it by all the local landmarks, right? East Main Street, right? Going up there. You look across. Everybody know where Barb's Butchery is, right? Used to be, what was it, Mountainside Deli or something? Right. Yeah, Spring Street School. Had been Mattawan School before the new high school was built, right? Spring Street School. And then it became Spring Street School. It was more like a grade school, and it burns in the 1950s. Anybody remember it burning? Yeah. So the stairs to it and the stone wall are still there. That's what I was going to say about Barb's Butchery. If you were parked parallel going into Barb's Butchery, you look over, you'll see, I think the handrail is still there, the steps are there, and the wall is all still there. You may know it as Spring Street School. That's what it was when it burns. After Beacon High was built in 1915, prior to that, it was the whole Mattawan School, right? They didn't need it as Mattawan High School anymore because they had the new high school once the city merged in 1913. Okay, we could go on all night, and I'm sure that Diane will be delighted to answer any questions that you might have, but would you please join me in thanking her for a fabulous presentation? And I have a little gift for Diane.
Is it a postcard?
I think it is, yes.
I hope so. I can't get enough.
It was hard for me to decide of what I had on hand because I purchase them on eBay all the time. I'm one of those crazy people at like 4 in the morning. So it's actually of Mount Beacon and has some partiers out front. Diane's other life is as an expert in cocktails, and so I envisioned that you could make a cocktail up for them.
I have seen the menu.
Well, then another event, why don't we have the menu from the cocktails? And then a little bit of candle that says on the front of it, happiness. The sunshine she brings us at the Historical Society.
Thank you so much.
Great job.
Thank you so
Great
much.
presentation. Thank you. Let's take a little quick picture here. Yeah, okay. Great. Okay, and before we do our door prize, because I'm going to be testing all of you that you are actually following us on Facebook tomorrow, I want to take a picture of all of you. So why don't you all give me a thumbs up or a hi or something, and we'll put a group picture on social media tomorrow. Come on, you can do it. That's it. Like we're having a good time here. Doesn't everybody want to join us, right? Okay, good. Okay, any other questions before we do our door prize? Who does not have a door prize ticket? You don't. I knew it. Mary Ann Dahl was very good about this. Okay, all right. Arnold doesn't have a door prize ticket.
While she's doing that, we have postcards for sale that include states, topics, and countries. We do have a small selection of local cards. These are postcards that have been donated to us from people that didn't want their postcards anymore. They're not Beacon related, so we're using them as a perpetual fundraiser.
You also have new postcards at the society.
Yes, at the Historical Society we have new postcards. These are all the vintage ones.
Okay, great. All right, one more round of applause for Diane, then we'll do our door prize. Okay. Door prize tonight is our copy of our fabulous book. I need the tickets. Yes, here she is. Look at her. So happy to be here. Mary Ann does so many things for so many people. She just finished running the huge, what do you call it? Not rummage sale. Rummage sale at St. Joachim's. And they raised $8,000 for the church. She's amazing. So, I hope that everybody already has a copy of this. If so, you can give this to your brand new neighbor who just moved to Beacon. But it's an amazing book. 540 pages, more than 1,000 photographs, thousands of pieces of information about the history of Beacon from Robert J. Murphy's 38 years of writing our Beacon Historical Study newsletter. Is our door prize tonight. For one lucky person. A green ticket. And I think when I was here 35 years ago as president, I might have been able to read it without glasses. I'm telling more people. All right, 079149. Oh my God! Okay, we'll take a picture here. Great. You're so supportive of everything. I'm so glad you won. Great. Okay, I do have another copy of the book. They're $40 if anybody would like to buy one tonight. Any other business to come before the Beacon Historical Study for our May meeting? If not, we are adjourned.